Hey, well, hi everyone. Thank you very much for watching or listening. Liam Hartery back with you today with another episode of Presenting Champions for the Simply Inspired podcast. And today I'm joined by a very special guest. I'm joined by the Poetic Hitman himself, Theo Toney. This man, obviously a professional fighter, but much more than that, he is also an entrepreneur, fitness specialist, martial arts instructor, MMA coach, self-defense instructor, poet, and more. Wow, we've got some great things to talk about today, obviously, with this man's history in combat sports and teaching. But as always, with my podcast, we're going to touch a little bit on the mindset that it takes to reach such a high level in one of the toughest sports in the world and teach it. We're going to be talking about poetry as well, because even though Theo's a very tough individual, he obviously has another side there to be writing the poems as well and things like that. So it's going to be good, guys. Stay tuned. And champ, thank you very much for making time for this. And like I was saying, thank you for being with me a couple of times when we had to reschedule. Great to have you here,
I
man.
appreciate you.
Appreciate you too, man. Appreciate you too a lot. So, like I was saying there, I mean, you do a lot of things, and I'll do my best so that we can touch on a little bit of everything. But I am actually going to go back in time just for a moment and talk about like where you first got involved in martial arts. Maybe if there was a particular person who inspired you to do it. Let's go back in time a little bit and talk about what lit that flame inside of you, please.
All right. Okay. So my first love started with uh, I liked Ninja Turtles and Bruce Lee. All right. So that's where it initially started. That's the fascination. I'll never forget. My mom was like, "Okay, these videos over here, you're not allowed to see." Right? It was I had my uncle had a couple old VHS, and I ended up watching. It was a Chinese Connection, right? I fell in love with it, loved that movie, and started getting into nunchucks, weapons. Fast forward a couple years later, um, I was in school, and a little of a troublemaker, ended up getting transferred to a new school, and getting introduced to a wrestling coach who took me aside and got me into the sport of wrestling. And from then on, it just took off.
Okay, so that's the beginning. Awesome, because I mean, I didn't know that. I've seen a lot of what you're doing now. You'd be surprised how many times the Ninja Turtles come up as inspirations for people, by the way, and obviously Bruce Lee, but those guys as well, because when I'm talking about this, that comes up quite a lot. So fair enough. I love it, absolutely love it. You mentioned something there about like being transferred from schools, and when I do these interviews, I don't like to obviously probe into anything personal, but I'm just asking because it's a lot of kids going through that. There's a lot of kids who don't have that direction. Maybe if there's somebody listening to this who's in that situation, or they have a family member who's in that situation. Obviously, you've turned that around to have a lot of success in your life. Obviously, not an overnight thing either. But I would like to touch on like what you would say to kids basically who are like getting into trouble, or they're in that situation, almost like what you would say to your younger self in a way now, I guess.
Yeah. So, at that time, I didn't have purpose. And I tell kids is, sometimes it can be as silly as liking Ninja Turtles and Michelangelo and, Bruce Lee. Find a purpose, find something that is going to keep you on that path. Because school itself, you know, yes, I had good grades, but the issue was I was so distracted by what was going on and trying to fit in and be like others. So, the good thing about it is that in that moment of being transferred to another school, I realized that this was opportunity now to just start fresh and find a purpose and go with it.
I love that. Absolutely love that. Like I say, I mean, people will be watching this all over the world, obviously the US, Europe, other parts of the world. And, there's so many kids going through that. And obviously, because you coach as well, so you teach and you compete, you have a very good perspective on that, I think. So I don't forget as well, you mentioned about the wrestling there and getting into that. Now, what I like to talk about with people at that point is like, when it goes from like a hobby or an interest that you're good at, you enjoy doing, into the realization of, actually I can go quite far with this, or maybe I can win something. Like I said earlier, it's not usually an overnight thing, it's usually step by step, but there is that transition of like, actually I can go further than I thought. What was that like for you at that time when you realized how far you could go?
What was it was interesting because, I'm still shy, you're still going through, you're learning, you're still going through, you're like the challenges of, injuries, you're still going through very challenges. So what it really hit me when, realizing that, hey, this is something that, you know, once I fine tune it and focus, I can now take this into, to becoming, even like say coaching, take it into, you know, going to other schools, university, college, things like that. It really hit me that this is something that, there's a lot more skills involved.
Mm,
It was that I'll never forget. It was, it's an eye opener, and this is where you really start to take your focus beyond just the sport.
absolutely, yeah. I love that because, like I've already said, probably, people see the success you're having now. I love to get into like the humble beginnings and where people started off because it's inspirational for people, so people can take inspiration, motivation. It's relatable to people as well if they're starting out. So, I love touching on those sorts of things. Now, obviously, with this, you have like other sides to your personality as well in terms of like not being stereotypical as a fighter. Being around the fight game, you'll know that the stereotypical fighter is not actually as common as what people think it is. I mean, a lot of guys have other sides, and I like to show people as humans, not just athletes. But in terms of like the poetry and in terms of like other things that you're doing, I think it's really cool. I think that like different
Thank you.
sides, to you being like having a sensitive side, having like the sort of tough, strong side, having the patience to teach and sort of coach people. There's a lot of stuff. I like the different, the diversity that you represent. And
Thank
with
you.
that, I mean, with the poems and everything, was that something you were also doing like when you were growing up, or did that come a little bit later?
I'm glad you said, because a lot of people I don't always speak on it. They always see me as a fighter first. So when I let people know that I was in poetry, and music first before I was touching on any of that. It was something where, and even it's funny, later on I found out my dad was also a poet. He used to write, so it's just something that was in my blood where, I remember in my spare time, just writing down something, the one liners. Now every phone I have, there's always little one liners or some poems that I tend to write. So it's always something that was a part of me, whether it was humming, playing an instrument, writing. It was my first love.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm not surprised really because I know it's like it's out there on your social media. But even when I sit with you now, I do get like those creative vibes as well as like the athlete. You know what I mean? I can really sort of feel that. So I mean, I knew obviously I heard about you, the Poetic Hitman, and what you're doing. And I know a little bit about it. But I thought, okay, let's sit down and find a little bit more about it. And I think it's like I said, I think it's awesome. I definitely think as well in an abstract type of way is very important for men listening to this in terms of like writing poems or getting your feelings out there. I do as well. Like, I mean, if I ever give like my family or my parents or somebody like a birthday card or, some special event, I'll always write a poem and put it in there. So I sort of know what you mean in a way. But I think as men, we tend to like push that sort of thing to one side, not express that sort of thing. So it's not really a question, but I'm just saying I think it's really great that you do, and I think it's really great that you tapped into that, and obviously that shows other people that even if you have the sort of traditional masculine, whatever that means these days, qualities, then at least you can have the other side as well. And I'm not really. I just wanted to say that to you. It's not really a question, but it's really cool. Where can people, if they haven't heard about this, where can they check out like your poems or some of this stuff
Um,
published?
Well, you know what? That's a good question. I'm actually looking. I gotta now put it out more. Like years ago with Facebook, when we had those little notepads, I
Yeah.
did have a lot on there. But now, it's the platform's changed a bit. So this is where there are moments where, on my Facebook, I'll put random on my my feed on my wall, put up some random stuff. But I'm looking into now publishing and doing more in the future.
Yeah.
And especially like you touched on is for me now, it's very important that I show people that as a poet, I'm also channeling that energy. Whether I'm in whether I'm happy, I'm sad, angry. I like to channel all of that into the poem, right? Training does that too as well, but these are moments where I could really show that my soul and the creative nature that that I am, right? I always tell people I think in poetry, so I can't help but there are moments where I got to get the thoughts out, and so I channel it through my Facebook wall.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I've seen some things on there. I mean, obviously, that was a big part of my reason for reaching out. Is there's some very deep thoughts on there. There's some very cool topics as well, and I mean that as a compliment. I love it. So that was a
Thank
big part of my reason. I think I came across you somewhere on Facebook. I think I saw a video or a post or something, and I looked on your profile, and then I watched some of your fights, and it just went from there. And I was thinking, wow, this guy is very, very diverse. So it's cool. Publish it, absolutely. I mean, my opinion for what it's worth, go for it. There's a guy I know where I come from in Wales in the UK. I'm in Cyprus now in Europe, but he's over there and he's got like 3 or 4 volumes of poetry out there. He's also a fighter, MMA, bare knuckle boxing, regular boxing. He does a bit of everything. And he's had a lot of success with that because people are fascinated by James Lilly, his name. I'll give him a shout out. And that people are fascinated by that almost a contradiction in a way. It's not a contradiction when you know him, but that's another story. And I think you could do something like that as well. So fingers crossed, we'll see some published volumes of poetry in the future. Coming back to the fighting side and everything, the wrestling, and you were sort of progressing through that. I just don't want this to slip my mind. The mindset thing fascinates me a lot about combat sports, and we'll come into your actual MMA career and some of the other things you've been doing shortly. But you have to have a lot of mental strength, I would say, to do what you do, especially with like, the wrestling seasons in the US and everything like that. I mean, it's a very sort of tough environment in terms of you competing frequently and everything. So was that something that you were kind of born with, that competitive aspect of your nature, or did it develop and cultivate like building a physical muscle, if you get what I mean?
Yeah, you'd say I had to develop it because it's what's funny is that, yes, it was me, my little brother, growing up with my sister, and I was never really the competitive one. I was always kind of trying to be neutral and trying to bring everyone together, But I find when I got into wrestling, it's where I had to dig deep and bring out I'd say the hitman, bring out that the other side that wanted to compete, wanted to be first, wanted to dominate, right? Until when I first started, I was just kind of surviving and learning the sport. And I had to learn to develop and bring that out.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that as well because I do feel, and you'll know this as a coach, by the way, but I do feel there's a lot of, um, I've seen a lot of people go into combat sports like physically prepared and not mentally prepared. And sometimes it depends very much where you go, but there is a lot of times like a gap there.
Yeah.
So it's something I like to touch on as well. And a lot of times, I mean, when we talk about like boxing, MMA, we'll come to all that. You see guys at like the weigh-in or whatever, they come face to face and a lot of times, I can tell because I'm around this a lot as a journalist and other things as well, like in camp with people and all this type of stuff. And when they come together, you can tell who's going to win a lot of times, and it can be deceiving physically, So it's something that just fascinates me. But anyway, not to go off topic. So in terms of MMA and in terms of like these different martial arts styles and everything you do there. I've read about your record. I've seen things on YouTube and what's there, and I've looked. But to be honest with you, I don't know how many fights you've actually had all in all, even though I've seen whatever's out there. So how many is it, champ? What?
Wow. It's a good question because it's about 200, 200 up to 200, a little more.
Okay.
I fight. It's just simply what I do.
Yeah.
And it's funny because for me, when I got into fighting, like I said, the first chapter was just learning and going through it. Then it was trying to, you know, get out the nerves. And so I looked at it as repetition where, you know, I wanted to make this real by competing and competing in every style, you know, whether it's wrestling, you know, the kickboxing, you know, knockdown, you know, just fighting in everything I could just to get the reps in and become that essential ultimate fighter that you know I wanted to be.
Yeah. Wow, over 200. Okay, that's a lot, man. You've been a busy man. And
Yep.
yeah, I mean, I knew it was a fair few, but you know what it's like with records and things. It doesn't always show the true picture. And I've seen, like I said, there's stuff on YouTube, there's stuff everywhere. So I was pulling it together, and in the end, I thought, okay, well, let's just ask him how many it actually is. Especially in this case, then, what I usually do with this is, like, I always say to people, I'd love to talk about every fight, but we'd be here like until next week or next month or something. So we have to sort of condense it down. And a lot of guys who've had as many as you, what I usually just say is like, tell us about your favorites. And you know, it's a big question, but I love it because when you ask that, you never know which ones are going to come back, and they're not the ones you expect. I'll tell you that from my experience. So, in your own words, like I say, it is a big question, but can you tell us about some of your favorite fights or your proudest moments, or however you sort of look at that personally?
Favorite fights. I could say there was one. I'll speak out as three. I'd say three. There's one where I fought a guy, Tim Jenny, and uh, I had opportunity to do like a promo, and I never forget. Like I'm there, and I'm like, we're doing a promo, like, and I'm talking to the guy. We're cool, and I was like, you know, we're in a limo, we're shooting, and it was so odd for me, you know, because I want to go in there's fight and I was in a moment where you know this is where I call my Zen moments where the poet and the hitman are aligned, and I'm able to go in there not nervous, ready, and you know I remember shooting the promo, and he's like, "Man, you're a joke," and then my line was supposed to be, "Well, you know what? I'm gonna take you on a choke." Right. And it was funny where I'm in there, we're shooting the promo, and then the day of the fight went in there and just you know had fun, dominated, and I'm choking him out. You know, so that was a fun experience. Um, then I had one where I fought. Oh, this one where my mom was there, right? You know, so my mom was there, my sponsor, my uncle came. You know, my best friend, my Eddie Superman, Dave Ford, my brother was there. You know, it was an amazing fight because everyone was there that supported me. They came through. It was Canada versus USA. You know, I'm there and I fought a guy that was man. He was highly decorated. He was in 7 different styles. You know, and it was just a moment where I remember I was brushing up on some of my kung fu, and you know, I went in there, showcased my hand speed, slammed the guy, you know, dropped them with a short uppercut. So it was a fight where I was able to bring out that style and showcase that hey, you know, yes, you know, I'm sometimes I get excited, but there I got some skills behind that. So that was one of my I'd say that's my favorite because my mom was there, so you know she was truly excited. And then third fight I really like was this is when it was been a while, you know, you know, I went through I recovery through an eye surgery, a couple of recoveries for injuries, and I remember this is 2018. I had opportunity to fight for my title to, you know, it's been a while since I won the championship, and this was for bare knuckle knockdown, right? So with the karate, Kyokushin. So it was it was opportunity to come back, you know, and win the title again. And I remember, you know, I was so uneasy. Wasn't sure, you know, I'm going through the motions. And I remember looking at a picture of my niece, you know, I'm calm, I'm excited, I'm happy. And I'm like, man, I'm so happy. I'm so in love right now. And, you know, and I love it because those are my moments where I'm my most dangerous. So went in there and this guy was knocking everyone out. I mean, just knocking them out. And I went 3 rounds with him, and I remember changing my style 3 times. And in the third last round, I went in there, boom, got a couple shots on him. And the way knockdown is, it's like you gotta, if you're the guy's backing up, you could win points just on that. And so I'm there, and I had a combo of unanswered shots, and I remember that alone ended up winning me the fight. And this was, and it was funny because after that I ended up gaining a friend, not just a rival. So it was an amazing fight to really go in there and to be challenged mentally, not just physically.
Absolutely. Amazing. I mean, it's a great job of breaking them down. And I know when I ask people that, it kind of puts you on the spot in a way to like rack your brains and think, right, okay, this one, this one, this one. But I love it because what I found with that is like if you sort of hone in on this one or that one, you might miss another one that like on paper it seems a certain way, but to the person it's like super special. So I just say, okay, what was there? So it's an amazing job. I mean, a couple of other things around the fights, just to break it down, a bit of inspiration for the young guns out there as well. With this, fighting is an abstract one for you. It takes people around places they wouldn't ordinarily go if they weren't a fighter. I think that's a very cool aspect of the job, if you like. I mean, it's more than a job, but you know what I mean. And I think it's inspiring as well because it's like with martial arts, it improves people as people. They get to travel and see the world. Obviously, the financial side. There's a lot of other things. I'll come back to that in a minute. But with the traveling side, I'd imagine that. I mean, and also from what I've seen, you've competed all over. What are some places fighting has taken you that you wouldn't have necessarily gone if you weren't doing it? If that makes
So
sense.
the coolest place I got to go was Afghanistan and fight. Yeah, I was part of Team Canada. I got to be main event, and it's 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 funny because this was an experience more than just really just a fight. So we all went there. We just enjoyed. It's funny because we were overweight. Everyone, we enjoyed just the whole experience. And I can tell you, this was a fight where I was nervous, really nervous. And it was actually my first fight where right after the match, I ended up reciting a poem, right? And they actually pulled me aside, and I got to recite it again for TV, But it was a moment where I was truly got to be the poetic hitman in that sense.
Wow, I love that. Absolutely love that. I mean, I will come back to that some more with the different sides and everything, but it's absolutely awesome. I've asked you as well about like some of your favorite, like proudest moments and everything, but I'd also like to just flip that on its head with one or two other things. Is your best finishes and everything. I mean, this is another one. It's not always, it comes in different forms. It's not always the best, like fight itself, but sometimes the finish can still be like spectacular. And again, from the outside looking in, you can watch the fight and everything. Sure, you can, but it's like you're the one there having the assessment of your skills. And because you compete in diverse styles and everything, and what you said earlier, you said in one of those three that you really got to showcase your skills, and it kind of got me thinking. Okay, I wonder what like you think your best finish. It might be one of those ones you said, but it might be something else. So take it away with that one, please, champ.
My best, I'll say is one of my favorite was it was out there in Detroit. I was fighting a guy, these were guys, especially out there, the hype was there, the excitement, they really wanted to build up on some of these guys. So they had some guys that were semi-pro football players and really making a name. So I remember I was out there, long guy, and it was a really anticipated fight. We went through it up and down, and end up getting him in a front one arm choke, right? So I love doing chokes, and I show people that there's a difference between guillotine versus my one arm choke, right? When the person's taller, it's not you're not going to get that guillotine unless you go to the ground. So what I simply did was tilted his neck to the side and put him on an angle, which puts him on his toes, walked him forward, instant tap, right? So it's something that I practice a lot on. So I was really happy with it. People were just, mind was blown because they couldn't understand why it wasn't a guillotine or whatever. But, simple one arm choke, walk him forward, instant tap.
Yeah, yeah, I think I've seen that somewhere. That one that you mentioned, actually, or I've heard about it. That because I've definitely heard that, like with the chokes, you're very fond of that, and you've got like quite a few finishes that way. I don't know how many, but it's got to be a few, isn't it? So, yeah, okay, very good. Well, that's cool. Now, another thing I want to touch on, just changing the subject slightly, because remember, I'm trying to show all the different sides of the poetic hitman. I meant to ask this earlier, but it slipped my mind as we were getting into the fighting. But you mentioned about like, as well as the poems, like playing instruments and sort of the musical interest as well. And I meant to ask you then, I just go back to it for a moment. Is that something you still do, or is that something you kind of,
Um,
you know,
Yeah, so I did go to try doing the tenor saxophone again, and not the same. I still have my harmonica, but the big thing what I really started pushing into is back with the karaoke.
okay, yeah,
It's something where funny story. When I was a kid, I was in church and I'm singing, and I remember I'm there singing the song, and I look and I see a girl I like, and I froze and just forgot everything, ran off stage. So it's something where that I really needed to. It's an outlet, and it's something where I really wanted to get back into and really start doing. So I've been doing it lately. The last time I did 3 weeks ago in a big crowd and at a festival. I'm working security, by the way, and it was just random moments, and they're like, "Oh, here, do some karaoke." Went on stage, and people were just like, "What? Oh my God, I didn't know you could sing." But it's something that it's a part of me every day. If I'm not listening to music, either I'm singing or I'm humming, or there's some kind of musical element, some movement, in my life.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's the thing is, as I'm sitting with you, I do get that vibe as well. I mean, I just get the creative vibe, and like I said earlier, I mean that as a compliment. And it's not just because I know like about you on the social media. Even when I'm sitting with you now, you do have that strong creative vibe. It's a compliment, and it comes obviously creativity in different forms, many different forms. So I understand what you mean because even in my life, I'm also a photographer. I write more stories. I'm getting a book published soon, and I do all different types of things. So I understand the creative process, but it's really, really cool to touch on that, and it's really good to show people that you don't have to be like a one-trick guy. I mean, you can do different things and be happy for all the men and women out there. I love it because it's something that comes from the soul. So I really think that's very, very special. Okay, now with the fights as well, one other thing to touch on here that I think is a really good life lesson for people, then I want to come into the coaching. But as a competitor, when a fight obviously doesn't go to plan, when there's a tough loss or there's something that really, you learn from your mistakes. I mean, even what you were saying there, where you ran off stage and everything, not to do with fighting, but to do with the singing. I mean, I think that's really cool because people relate to that. Everyone has things like that, and but a lot of people try and sort of build themselves up and they don't want to share things like that. Whereas the fact you're very humble about all of this, I respect that because it takes a big man to, inside now to be able to do that. So the same thing, I mean, not to dwell on anything negative, but like the lessons you learn from losses, the way you bounce back from losses is a very good lesson, not only for fighting, but for life, all of life as well, I
Yeah.
think, to be honest.
Yep, that it's and a lot of people they see the smile, they might see the belt, they see what I've achieved, but I show them it was never easy. Even being the poetic hitman, my whole purpose it was to fight to try to bring that balance because a lot of times sometimes you're more afraid than anything. Sometimes you're too hyper, so you know that's what I really want to showcase with people is that, especially after those losses, a lot of times it's, in those moments, I knew what I needed to do. Or there's some moments where, especially in wrestling, when, I was in weight classes that were stacked. And you go through that mentally where you're like, wow, you, you're competing against another animal. And you went in there and you're physically exhausted, you know, and you're sitting there and you're just trying to take it all in. You realize that, hey, you know, this wasn't the outcome you planned. You realize that you got to be around your teammates, your coaches. You got fans there, and it's upsetting. But at the same time, is you learn to collect it all in as it's part of the sport. This is what you signed up for. You wanted this out, and then you realize, hey, I love it. And I find that as you go through it, you know you're constantly chalking it up as it's part of the process rather than taking it personal, right? And this is where I find that when you're training, and I'm always telling myself, man, no one's going to hurt me more than I'm hurting myself in these moments, right? And as you take that in, you realize that even through those losses, you're realizing it's part of the process. So it's no longer personal. It's just another notch in your belt. It's a part of the journey, and it's something that's going to make you better. And even for me, it helped me to unleash more and to become more balanced within what I do.
I love that, man. I mean, I knew that would be a good answer, but that's a really good answer because like I said before, it's such a valuable lesson with life. I mean, being in the process, you'll see this a lot in the fight game, being around it as long as you have. Like when people are enjoying doing it for the love and building it up and getting a bit better every day and learning from the best, they're a lot happier than the guys who get in like wanting to do like a get rich quick type scheme, or they think this is going to make me famous. Because I found like even if those guys get famous, if they're doing it for that, a lot of the times they're like bitter and unhappy and they just don't feel. So I really think like obviously you can aim for that, but I always find the happiest guys are like doing it for the love. And I really feel like your love of this is really like a powerful lesson.
Yeah, I think you gotta love it, because I could take you back to with wrestling
Yeah.
when I was the new kid. There's a crazy guy. I'm there, all the energy out there. Is I'll never forget I beat a guy one time. My little brother was in the locker room and would tease the guy, and I'm like, "What are you doing? Don't do that." But I remember he was hurt, and I was like, wow. And but understanding the passion. And then never forget the first time when I lost, and everyone used to call me Future. And it was a quiet moment, because after that, no one called me that anymore. They looked at me and, oh, just a regular guy. And it was a hard moment, because after that, things changed. But the pressure was off a bit. And this was a moment where I could really own that space, and now learn to kind of, I had a little more wiggle room to develop and truly understand in those moments that, hey, I could lose, I could win. And I had to learn to now own those choices rather than let the experience of what if own it. So I was able to now go in there and now decide if what I wanted to do.
Yes, I mean it's amazing because I think as well, especially in this day and age as well, with all the social media stuff, the people that grow up with that, I mean, like I'm in my 20s, so when I was growing up, it was kind of there, but it wasn't big like now. But when I see the young kids now and they have the expectation of like perfection and everything falsely, I love that, with yourself, you're talking about progress, not perfection. You're talking about like getting a little bit better. And it was a big thing even for me. I mean, I remember seeing the Michael Jordan quote where he was saying about the amount of times he's been counted on to win the game, or sometimes even been winning shot and he's missed, even though he's like the greatest of all time. I think it was like 300 games or something. He lost, and I remember reading that thinking, wow. I mean, that really puts it in perspective. So learning from failure, growing from it, amazing. Now with the coaching side of it, it seems we're sort of getting into that space with this. You do a lot with that, with the fitness, with the self defense. But what I'm going to do is group it together a little bit because one way or another, you're helping people to progress. You're helping people to become the better version of themselves. And one of the reasons I love this is it's like with martial arts, with fitness, with any of it, whether people go on to compete, I wouldn't say personally, I wouldn't say it's as important as like when you see For example, you see a kid come into the gym somewhere and he's not speaking to anybody, and they're really shy and they won't come out their shell. And then a little bit, training a few weeks, couple of months, whatever, and they're coming in the gym, talking to everybody, come out of their shell. Now, whether that kid goes on to compete or not, same thing for adults, then it's an amazing transformation that they go through. And when I see gyms where, they don't want to bring people in unless they're going to compete and they're like, we don't want you here. I kind of think they're missing the point a bit with that because obviously it's a personal development thing, and it's a personal growth thing. And you're in the position to be guiding people through that process. And obviously they have to do the work, but you're there with them. And I'd like to get into like basically what that means to you or how that feels, how you put a measure on like, wow, I'm helping people progress here. If you get where I'm going with this one, I
Yeah,
think
right.
it'd be a
Yes.
powerful topic.
I'm glad you said because a lot of times when you look at the martial arts world, there's the discipline, you got to be confident, there's respect, you know, it's a fine-tuned system, right? So you're there, coaches barking orders, you're working with regular people. It's not something that I could just translate to them. So this is where now with people, I'm showing them, okay, here's a goal. All right, now here's the steps we're going to take towards that goal, right? I'm showing them about motivation, right? I'm showing them that, hey, you got to work, you got to go do this, you got to do that. I'm taking them through a process of a lifestyle and trying to develop that discipline and that love. Opposed to on the sport aspect, there's a trophy, there's a belt, you got a medal. You know, you understand that win and what you're fighting for, and then you have when you have regular people, you know, sometimes what's funny is that we they Jim, they dismiss that person, but not seeing that potential that of what could be, right? Just because there's not that medal, I get that it's might be more a little more difficult, but there's still a potential for them to develop in ways that might go beyond the sport itself. So I find that I'm in between where I work with a lot of athletes, but I also work with people that are injured. I work with people that, are not sure, that, that have confidence issues. I work with people that, you know, their basic is so important. It's not them competing, it's them maybe getting over an injury. It's maybe their first time in the gym. It's developing those basics, before anything. So I find that yeah, a lot of places miss out because they fail to understand that value. So for me now, high energy competitor athletes, now I'm working with kids. I'm working with people injured. So now I'm going through the little things like balance, coordination, setting goals, right? I'm working on those little things that are going to help them to develop, right, into those, the individual that they want to be or that person that has achieved those goals.
Absolutely. I love it because, like I said, it applies to life. It doesn't just
Yeah,
apply to fitness. And you do, obviously, with like, as far as I understand it, with the fitness coaching, the martial arts coaching, the self defense. So, even that is quite diverse as well. And I love it because, another thing I'll say to you as well, just not so much as a question, but you have like a very good patience. You have like a very good presence. So, it's like when we're talking now, I can tell that you're listening to understand, you're not listening to like just respond because a lot of people are saying, listen to somebody talk and they'll be like, oh, yeah, 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 but I want to get to
I have
such
to
and
learn.
yeah, whereas you're like actually taking it in, and I can just feel it with like a present thing. So, I mean, I'm sure the high energy is there because I can feel your passion, and I really think the world needs more passion because so many people go through the motions. But as well as that, that thing about the presence, and I have to ask you a question with that. I mean, is that something you inherently have, or is there like a spiritual practice? I mean, are you like a type of person who meditates or something, or
Well, I do believe in God. My name Theophilus, which is I was named after my grandfather. Well, two grandfathers and my father. It means friend of God. So that's something that keeps me rooted. My names keep me rooted, and so you know. But I could tell you, it's something I had to develop. Being and this is why I'm also proud of myself because I jumped into the fire, into the difficult moments knowing that is going to develop me. So from being a high energy kid that couldn't focus and doing so many different things and constant on the go, there was a lot of great moments and lessons that I had to take and to be able to learn the patience, because a lot of times the moments you want to act when it doesn't require action, right? You want to you want to fight, but you didn't need to fight to win, right? So I'm learning that the different ways to win through patience.
yeah? I mean, I really like that just because, I mean, like with these interviews as well. Back in the day, I used to prepare questions and things, but these days I don't really do that much. I read up on the people and I pick a few themes to talk about, and I think, okay, where it's going to go from there, it'll just flow. And some of these things, I mean, like that, like the patience thing. I mean, I didn't really get the feeling from that from social media. I get the feeling now I'm sitting with you and everything. So I think it's really good. And as well as that, with the USA being like a very fast paced culture, and it's no disrespect because there's some fantastic aspects to the USA culture, but there is the fast paced element where people don't really stop for things. Not to generalize too much. And obviously, with this, when you're developing that patience, it's what kids need because kids put themselves under so much pressure, and there's so much pressure from the world now to figure everything out fast. Like you've got all this, the Forbes 30 under 30 thing, and you've got to achieve this by this age and do this by this time. It like paralyzes people. I mean, aim for that if you want to. I'm just saying that, when you're taking kids through it step by step, or adults do, any of them, they can use that in any life area, which leads me to my question for you, because I'm sure people don't bring this up enough. You've been fighting for however many years, you've had all of these amazing experiences. How has being an athlete to such a high level changed you outside of being an athlete, if that makes sense? So, like with other areas of your life that are
Well,
totally
you know,
unrelated.
yeah, it's taught me because even for me, like when I step into places, I can't help but try to own the energy and you know and so it's taught me that, as well as even the confidence to to start something, to begin, not being afraid to to try and to be creative. That's something even as I work with security, with my security crew, teaching them, presence, teaching them, the customer service, teaching them tactile communication and how to deliver certain aspects, and even being ready, being prepared, and teaching them, how to de-escalate, so being in that athlete, it taught me that readiness. And then because there's a physical readiness, I had to develop in other ways, because like security, you can't just go and grab the person, and you gotta develop, you gotta even I say, listen, sorry, it's time to go. It's either you walk on your own or I help you, and I smile, right? I'm delivering in a way, I really want to do this, but I gotta prepare and be patient with it. I gotta layer it on. So it's something that it's helped me to to develop the confidence I need, off outside of the mats, because that's something where you're an athlete, you're really shining when you're punching, kicking, you're choking people, slamming them, and everyone loves you there. But then when you're not doing those things, you got to still develop those skills to still be that superstar, when you're doing sales.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing, to be honest, about, from what I've seen of like how you conduct yourself as well, because when you're an athlete, obviously a lot of people look up to that. So the way you carry yourself is important. But yeah, I mean, especially with security, man, you've got to have a real balance, a real fine line there, of like, obviously you're in a position like a guy like yourself where you can use obviously like the excessive force and you choose not to and everything, and it takes a lot of self-control, and I've seen that a lot with what I do with like when I'm doing the journalism and stuff, we work with famous people and people like Floyd Mayweather, I work with and people like that. I'm not name dropping, I'm just saying. And you work with the security team a lot, and I'm working with them like even when they're setting up the venue and everything, and because you've got to know like where to be to interview them and where to be to and all this. And the restraint those guys have, I've got all the respect in the world for it, man. I mean, they could be like the biggest bullies going, and actually they're some of the most polite and respectful people, and the same with fighters as well. I found that like everybody who like when you get to the point you've got to, I think maybe it's because you've got not got a lot to prove in that way. Like you know what you can do, and I think it's usually the insecure people who are kind of like kick off and cause problems for everybody. In my experience, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. So I don't forget. Tell us about the championship as well, because I've been looking at the belt and everything a little bit, and I meant to mention this earlier as well. It's been a hectic time, so my brain is scrambled. It is what it is. But you mentioned about that, and I want to talk about this from your side, but also from your community, because I've been meaning to ask you, like earlier on, you mentioned about your mom watching you compete, and you mentioned that that was one of the special ones, and I find that fascinating. Like when I'm ringside or cage side or whatever, and you have, wives and girlfriends and mums and dads and grandmas and all of this stuff, whoever watching, and it's nerve wracking for them, even though they believe in the person. So winning the title, bringing that home, getting the publicity and the exposure that you have these days, what was the reaction from like your family, friends, community with some of your early successes? Because obviously you've been doing it for a while, but if we just go back a little bit, even to the wrestling days, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, you know what? It was, the first win, it kind of solidifies that, oh, it's real, that it's something, because, that was something where, you know, my parents, they're always supportive. But, starting off, it's kind of like, oh, what are you doing this? Why? Because it's like, even I laugh at my mom. She's like, oh, you don't want to ruin your nice hair. You're on these mats, right? There's always those what if moments. So I can tell you that first win, that first championship, it really, you come back to your school, you know, people look at you differently, teachers hold you in a higher esteem, your family member, they're congratulating, they're proud of you, your teammates, they're relying on your coach, in the moment. And it's funny because it's one moment your coach is going to say, good job. The rest of the season, and then after you win, it's good job. They're proud of you. So it's really, it's interesting because it's in that moment of sports and you win, it's accepted by everyone, to your team, to the school, to that region, and you know you become a symbol of someone that never giving up, of hard work, of because now you've achieved, so you're not just there on the mats and there late and fighting. Now you've become someone that they could dissect and see the work ethics, the blood, the sweat, the tears, the discipline, the respect. They now they understand all of what you've achieved from that championship.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I love that because again, it's something people overlook. People are looking at you personally and everything, and obviously so they should. But it shows that there's a lot of other people in the lives of athletes, sort of helping them, or what you're doing is having an impact on them. So it's really good, man. It's really really good. The last couple of things, we'll wrap up shortly, but as I keep them sort of hour 15, whatever, for people's attention spans, what that's like nowadays. But the last couple of things, obviously with your future plans as well. I mean, I'd like to touch on that briefly, because it's an important lesson that we've spent a lot of time looking back, but there's still some good things to come, like with the coaching, with obviously with the poems, we talk about that, with your actual fighting as well, with different life areas. So I don't mind really how far ahead you'd like to go in time, if it's close, if it's far. But if there's any goals that you have that you're aiming for next, specifically, if you're just seeing where the journey takes you, that's also cool. But I just want to give a little mention to the future as well, please.
Okay, so future, I'm married now. December is gonna be a year. You know,
Congratulations.
that in itself, it's oh, thank you. It's challenging, wife, they look at fighting in a different sense where, you're going to war and you might not come back. And, so they see it in such of a barbaric, way. But, you know, this is where even for myself, even being, being a coach, this is where I come into it as, listen, I'm a family man now, this is something I do from love. I'm now thinking about the future, right? So when I work with my clients and my students, I'm telling them, listen, I need you to win for me to win now, right? I myself personally, I'm gonna work on me, just like my wife. I'm gonna work on me, but then now I need her to be successful. So I'm gonna communicate better, right? I'm going to even work on my tone, right? With my athletes, I'm gonna encourage them because I want them to feel loved as well as when I'm not around. I want them to remember that in their head so they could remain positive and keep going. So I'm at a point where, I realize that, yeah, in the future, I got to step up as that role model, because before, you know, going through, I had some eye injuries and stuff, and you kind of step back and you kind of, woe is me, and you're working on it, you're healing. But I look at now, once you step into being that coach, being that husband, being that father figure, being a man, you have to accept the responsibility that, hey, you're being watched. You're gonna be People are gonna try to duplicate what you've done. So this is where I emphasize on the mindset, making sure that, sorry, making sure that, you understand those healthy conversations in your head, making sure you understand having a belief system, having something or someone that's going to maintain that focus, making sure that, you're loved, and making sure you're understanding what it takes and the hard work behind the scenes. So in the future, it's me being better than, I always say I train today to become better than it was yesterday. So now it's in the future, it's me developing my kids program that I'm developing at a community center, really, going deep on that, and showing them that, hey, my path of being a fighter and an athlete, these are lessons and skills that you're going to take outside of that ring, cage, or mat in the future. Right now, you just got to be that athlete, but understand everything we're going through is towards the future. Because I myself now, is not about me. It's going to be about these young minds and what they pick up. Because a lot of times, let's say, I might swing my nunchuck and they see a weapon, and I'm seeing something that's developed coordination. I'm seeing something that is like a artist with his paintbrush painting. I'm seeing something that may keep me calm, and there's a control aspect to it. But right now, they only see that. So it's helping them, just like my wife. I'm showing her, hey, yeah, I go into fight and compete, but this is me. I love myself, and I'm able to demonstrate what I've learned. I'm there competing. I'm enjoying the exchange of thoughts, of action, of idea. And in a sense, I'm just writing a poem with my fists.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, well, I mean, it makes a lot of sense because the different things you do, they are different forms of expression, in their own way and everything. So, I love that as well. And the kids program as well. I mean, yeah, influencing the next generation. I absolutely love it because, I think that's one of the sort of highest aspirations that we can aspire to in life is making that kind of difference, in the world. So I absolutely love it. I think we'll wrap things up shortly. Before I go, champ, is there anything else, because you are a very diverse individual, is there anything that I've missed that you're doing that we haven't given a mention to? I mean, I'm sure we can go a lot deeper with every single subject, but when I'm aiming for this, I'm aiming for like some fun stories from the fights which we've had, some life lessons which we've had. I mean, everything else is a bonus, but it's honestly exceeded my expectations. But before I go, is there anything that we haven't mentioned that you're doing that you would like to mention?
The big thing I always really want to talk to people about is there's always a what if it doesn't happen. But I always tell people there's a what if it does happen, right? Because those are the moments we forget about. We forget about what if this does work, right? My experience when I went to Afghanistan was it was so unexpected that I wasn't properly prepared. So going out there and being so nervous to the point that you lose, these are lessons that I tell kids that, hey, there's a what if you do. So I tell them that keep in mind that, you know, it starts off as fun and you're able to develop it in a lifestyle, something that you enjoy and something that, you could potentially make money. So I was telling them, plan, make it fun, tap into your coaches and truly make it something that you're going to enjoy and that you're going to be ready for because there's always that what if it does happen, right? Losses are always going to be there, but it's the wins from the losses that you're really going to propel you forward because, I can tell you that, I'm not I'm a totally different animal now than I was before, where I was stubborn. I just went in there and I just wanted to fight, compete. I competed through injuries, didn't want to listen. And there are humbling moments that really made me think, that really made me stop and have to develop. Like moments like I got hit by a truck, moments of having eye surgery. You know, these are things that, almost dying 9 times. These are moments that will always shape me towards now my better future as well as my kids' better future and my students.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, 9 times. Well, that is really something. I mean, like a cat with 9 lives. Always land on your
Yep,
feet.
yep.
Yeah, I mean that is. I didn't know that, but that is amazing in and of itself. I'm glad you're still here to be able to influence so many people's lives and change lives. Obviously, for us to have this conversation as well. And like I said just now, I mean, honestly, it's exceeded my expectations. I knew we'd have a lot to talk about, but it's really gone like beyond that in a sense. It's deeper and more meaningful for people. So I'm just grateful, first of all, for your time and also for you being such an open book about the aspects of your life that we have got into today. I'm sure there's a lot more, but nonetheless, we can talk about some great things, and um, I've enjoyed it. I hope you have as well. Really, it's simple as that.
Yes, I
Yeah.
truly enjoyed it. Right?
Likewise.
Before I go, I want to tell people, what poetic hitman means is simply I go to war with my hands, but I defeat opponents with my mind. And I'm encouraging people to find those balances. It's so easy. I can tell you a lot of moments where younger getting lost in that anger and that rage and being lost in it and not having that control. I can tell you moments where I was calm and I was at peace. And, it's so important as, to develop those balance. That's why I tell people I don't have time to hate because I'm too busy becoming great, right? You gotta achieve for a higher aspiration.
Absolutely. I love it. That's a very valuable lesson as well. Very, very powerful, very meaningful. And I will also say to our viewers as well before we go, guys, for more quotes and the Poetic Hitman, follow this man if you don't already, because he is out there on social media, Facebook, Instagram. I don't know about Twitter or X as it is now and all that, but you're out there. In other words, he's not hard to find. Yeah, I'm very approachable, obviously, hence I reached out to you and everything. So I want people to know that as well. If you want to connect, don't hesitate to reach out. But champ, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll send you this when it's released and everything. So if you could share it as well, I'd be super grateful. And between the two
Thank
of
you
us,
for having me. I really appreciate everything, your insight. People like you are very valuable because, it's important to be able to bridge that gap, and even a great platform for people to express and talk. I talk about things that I've never talked about. So thank you.
oh, well, thank you. That means a lot to me as well. So it's much appreciated. I appreciate you as well. Have a great day, champ, and we'll talk soon. We'll keep in touch for sure, 100%.
All
But yeah,
right.
you have
Thank
a
you.
great day. Thank you. Okay, take care. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.